Hey, Chad.
Hey, Andy.
Hey, John.
Hey Andy, just so you know, the join the meeting button on today's website page does it brings you to an like the November meeting. The one works that's within the PDF of the meeting agenda, but just FYI.
All right, thanks. I'll forward that to Tiffany. So yeah, when you come across that stuff, feel free just to send it straight to Tiffany. I really appreciate that.
Well,
So I'll
I didn't realize until just now when I tried to join. So
thank you. Yeah, Tiffany was out sick today. But I will make sure that that's fixed going forward. I know that notification went out yesterday with the agenda and stuff, but thanks, Kirsten. Really appreciate that heads up. I know I owe you a response. I'm hoping to get you one today, so apologies for the delay, Kirsten.
sounds good. Yeah, and I'll be off for the next week, but then I'll have more time to work on it again and make adjustments, or if you have other side projects you want
Okay.
my help with, be thinking of those for not next week, but the week after.
No worries. Yeah. All right. No problem. I'll get your response this week then. Enjoy the time off. Well deserved. Are you going back to family or vacation
Now
somewhere?
it's a staycation. My brother's family is coming to visit me, so I'm going to pick him up in Boise tomorrow. So, and he's got a 2 and 4 year old. So, I was trying to get all of the things figured out for, I don't have any 2 and 4 year old things at my house. So just making sure we get all that squared away. So
I'm sure it'll be a good time. I'm sure we'll be able to show them out that part of the state out east. It's gonna be gorgeous. I'm sure they'll love it.
yeah,
Enjoy it.
looking forward to it.
I love staycation sometimes. So, morning, Mark. Sarah.
Hi.
I thought you weren't making it today, Sarah. I must have been confusing myself.
Oh, no, I can pop on for a few minutes, like about a half
Okay.
hour, 45 minutes. So yeah,
Appreciate it.
thank you. Yeah, good to see you.
Hello.
Hey, Scott. How you doing?
Freezing. Cold
Freezing.
outside.
I think I finally adjusted to the weather here. I'm not cold till it's like low 30s now. That was a different story 2 years ago, Scott. I'll tell you, I was cold. I was wearing underlayers every day of the year, every day of winter.
Yeah, this is the time of year, my least favorite, the freezing fog that sits in the valley for a couple weeks. Like, no thanks. Nope.
I know, and the models, the weather model, I don't know if anyone watches the weather models. I love watching that. And we're not gonna get any snow. So I thought we were gonna get some snow end of January, maybe February. They're pushing it out, but that ridge is moving inland, and we're just getting the edge of it. Unfortunately, it's just the cold weather, at least sunny.
Right.
You know, I was up in some deep snow at Lolly Lake this last weekend. It must have been about 6 feet of 4 or 5 feet of snowpack up there. Did some gorgeous snowshoeing though. They're getting some snow at the top of the Cascades still. Right? Let's see. Like I said, Chad Tiffany is out sick today, so it'll just be me filling in there, which is fine. But once we get a quorum here, we can definitely go ahead.
Great. I think Courtney Grease will be joining shortly.
Okay, that's good to know. Hey Jessica, nice to see you. I know you're making an introduction. She's acting administrator for Habitat Division in place of Sarah today. So welcome to the meeting. She'll be with us the next few months.
Hello, all. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. Always appreciative. All right, let's see. We got Chad, Scott, we got Fran,
We
we
need
got
one more, okay?
Yeah, we got Mark, Andrew. If once Andrew signs on, since Courtney's coming, and I'll be sure to add Courtney on the. Oh, okay, there we go.
Courtney's
So I guess Andrew would be the only one, which is fine because 1, 2, 3, 4. Just making sure we have 5 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is Mark on here? Did he disappear? Thought I saw him logging in. He must be logging right back. I know I saw his face like a few minutes ago, so we just need him or Andrew to hop on.
Do we not have quorum, Andy?
No, not quite yet. Mark was on here, CERN, but he just apparently logged off, so he might just be having connectivity. Let me double check here. There's Andrew. Once he's ready to go, then Chad, we can kind of hand it over. We will have quorum at that point. 5 members. All right, Chad, we're recording. I'll hand it over to you.
Very good. Hopefully Mark's able to join us again shortly. All right, we'll call the meeting to order and we'll start with roll call. Andy, will you please lead us through roll call?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call your name. Please respond in the affirmative if you're present. Chad Washington.
Here.
Scott Lightcap.
Present.
Courtney Greisel.
Here.
Is it? I'm sorry, Greasel. Okay, I apologize. Fran Cafferata.
Here.
Andrew Perky.
Here.
Mark CERN.
Here.
Oh, nice steamer. Mark Grandbreimer. Jennifer Weichel.
Here.
I saw you. Kate Wells. And I believe Sam is out too today. We just Chris Allen.
Here.
Sarah Gregory.
Here.
Perfect. All right, Chad, we do have quorums. I will hand it back to you.
All right, thank you, Andy. With that, has everyone had a chance to review the updated agenda that includes a project amendment request for agenda item 5? All right. So we'll approve the agenda unless there's any comments or concerns. Hearing none, we'll consider the agenda approved and move into the consent agenda, which consists of the meeting minutes from the November meeting. Has everyone had time to review those? Were there any edits, changes? Okay. Do we need a motion to pass that, Andy, or can we just do the same?
Same.
Yeah. So we'll just consider that approved unless there's any concerns. Hearing none, we will move on to public comment. Andy, did we have anybody request public comment?
At this point in time, we didn't have anyone do any written requests, but this is an opportunity for anyone online to please raise your hand virtually, unmute your mic, or come on screen. We'll give you a few seconds to do so if you'd like to provide comment. All right, Chad, I don't see any public comment, so we can go on.
All right, Andy, I'll just ask again if there's anybody that would just like to introduce themselves, if they don't have public comment, but members of the public that want to say who they are, they're welcome to at this time. And if not, that's okay too. And hearing none there, that brings us to the GRB.
Chad, we do have one hand that just went up.
All right, very good. Looks like Stephen, would you like to come off mute and introduce yourself?
I figured somebody's got to talk, but my name's Steve DeMarco, Elysium Ranch off of Dode's Creek, and we are trying to work on the creek itself. So trying to get as much information as I can here to see what we can do to help out and increase the viability of the creek and the area around it. Does that
Great.
make
Well, it's
sense?
nice. It does, and it's nice to meet you, and we appreciate your presence at the meeting. Thank you for taking the time to introduce yourself. We have another hand up, Cindy Bright.
Hello, Cindy Bright with the Douglas Soil and Water District. Hi, Chris Allen, my very first supervisor from many years ago. I have a strategic implementation area in the South Umpqua that I'm working on. I'm currently working with 9 landowners doing water quality projects. So I'm anticipating putting in a PFA grant for a collective in-stream. I have probably almost 3 miles of in-stream project in a one watershed area that I want to do. So I'm listening in to see what you guys are working on.
That's incredible. Thank you for taking the time to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're working on. And hopefully you've reached out to Andy and you can consider him a resource moving forward as you're working on the development of that proposal. All right. I think that might be it, Andy.
Yes, that is. And just for the record, Chad, I see Kate Wells has logged on. So, Kate, I'll mark you as president for the meeting.
Very good. So I believe, Jessica, would you like to lead us through the GRB update and
Yeah,
introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair and committee members. So my name is Jessica Watson, and I'm currently the acting Habitat Division Administrator here at ODFW for the next 6 months. And that's while Sarah is on a rotation in the Director's Office to assist with the Director's Office legislative session duties. So I've been with ODFW for the past 11 years, working in our Marine Resources Program on policy and ecosystem-based management, and I'm excited to be here today and to hear more about the PFA program and all of the work you do. But to give you a little bit of an update with regards to the GRB, so it includes continued support for the Private Forest Accord and additional funding for the Private Forest Accord grant implementation. So just thinking of currently where we're at, when looking at the PFA grant budgets, assuming 10 million is distributed this cycle, the PFA ending balance will be approximately 4.8 million for the next biennium. So conservatively looking at roughly 2 million per year over the next 2 years for additional grant cycles. But the GRB does include a special purpose appropriation with an emergency fund of 14 million to be used for grants to support PFA once the habitat conservation plan is finalized. Both ODFW and ODF have grant programs, so 10 million for PFA grant program at ODFW and 4 million to the Small Forest Land Investment in Stream Habitat program at ODF, and that would be supported by this investment. And it's not clear yet what is meant by the HCP has been finalized, and it's our understanding that that will need some clarification during legislative commission considerations and committee considerations. Currently, existing PFA staffing within ODFW is maintained in the GRB, and there are no policy option packages related to PFA. There are still several steps of uncertainty regarding our budget as we move forward. Ultimately, the legislature will adopt the GRB and ODFW's final budget during this 2025 legislative session, which kicks off next Tuesday, and contents of our budget could change before our budget's finalized. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions about the GRB, and I will do my best to answer them.
Jessica, I'll just lead off with a question, and maybe it's just more clarification that as committee members, we cannot lobby for funding as committee members, but we are free to do that without that hat on, representing our own organizations. Is that correct?
Andy, can you?
Yes, that is
Confirm.
correct. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chad, for saying that.
Just a helpful reminder to all the committee members.
Yes.
Any other questions for Jessica? Mark.
Yeah, hi. Jessica, thanks for the update, and maybe you can help me understand a little bit, and maybe Chad or others have a handle on it as well. But what I'm recalling is the PFA called for about $10 million a year for the mitigation funding and support. And so I'm wondering how, as it sets up now that it's possible that there'll be less than that, does that change the PFA agreement in any way, or is there, because what I recall anyway is that was sort of a commitment that the state made.
So currently in the GRB, there is that 14 million, and 10 million of that is slated to go to the PFA grant program. It just has this contingency that the HCP has been finalized, but there is the 10 million there. So the numbers I gave that seemed less, or, you know, thinking about the end of this cycle and not including that.
Right. And my impression, and I'm not involved in the HCP though, that has a longer time horizon, that even as a best case scenario, it's not likely to be done in the near term.
Mark, I think we can get some real inside perspective from Jennifer Weichel, who is very intimately involved with that. Jennifer, would you like to add something to that? Jennifer, can you hear us?
I'll shoot her a Teams message real quick.
Okay.
She
I'm
might
not
be
sure if
frozen.
she's just very still or if she's frozen.
I think she's frozen, but I'll shoot
I
her a
will say
Teams.
there's
I am
been
back.
outages in internet like all over the place in Oregon today. So
Okay, it sounds like Jennifer is back.
Yeah, I
And
don't
off
know if
the-
you're looking for me, Jennifer, but I am back. I have my camera off because of internet bandwidth issues possibly. I
Perfect.
apologize. Yeah, I got kicked off. So I don't know if a question came to me, but I just wanted to respond to Mark's question. And
Yes.
you are correct, Mark, that the deadline for getting the HCP finalized and incidental take permits is 2027. So it's a bit curious that they put that contingency on this money for this next biennium before 2027. But at this point, just where we're at, I don't envision we'll be done any sooner than 2027. So it may be something we need to follow up on and have a conversation about.
Yeah. Is that helpful, Mark?
Yeah, it is. And I'm just curious, Chad, in conversations you may have had with others from your lens, does that jeopardize the PFA agreement, or does it just continue as it is with potentially less funding in the near term?
Continuing as it is with less funding does not jeopardize the agreement. Now, if there were to be entire programs that went unfunded, that might be a different situation, but just reducing the funding does not, violate the PFA and all of a sudden we're unwinding things.
Okay.
Now, the three programs, maybe four, if fully funded, would be closer to 35 million. So this 14 million is certainly underfunded. It's less than half. So we all have some work to do to try to advocate for that in our own way. Again, not as committee members, but yeah, it's important.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Jessica, well, thank you for joining us and looking forward to working with you over the next 6 months.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. And everyone, I'll put my contact information in the chat and feel free to reach out to me at any time. And I'm sure I'll be reaching out to you in the next couple months as well, just to touch base and see how things are going.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jessica. Next, Andy, would you like to lead us through the project amendment request that you received?
Yes, happy to. I think I'll be talking for the next few minutes here. I appreciate you guys' patience as I've been sending information last week to you guys, updated information, quite a bit of it. Let me share a screen here and we're kind of get right into it. And Jessica, we do have chat turned off here, so I can distribute information after for that connection. I'm happy to up that in my notes. Let's see, should be coming in now. Let me just make a quick note here to get Jessica's contact info out to all of you real quick before I forget. Doing double duty here with Tiffany out. Alrighty. Okay. Thanks everyone for the patience. So as you can see on screen here, and I sent our actual amendment form to all of you this morning. Like I said, it was last minute. I apologize for that, but I appreciate the patience and understanding and making sure we get this out. The project South Fork, Clear Creek, and Lower North Fork Wood and Fish Passage Restoration Project was awarded funding $100,627 in 2024 in last year's funding award with the first suite of projects. In November, late November, I was approached by the planning team, which is it's a large team, but also involves ODF&W staff members, Chris Cunson, Derek Wiley. There was a discovery of a 6-foot natural falls. I think you can see my cursor on screen here.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a natural falls right here. Like I said, I did send you guys a bigger map if you want to look at that. There was a discovery of about a 6-foot one. It was enough that it created a large barrier. So this was unknown, unforeseen. As many of you know, all of you are restoration practitioners yourself. Sometimes in these rugged rural areas, you just don't know what you don't know until you get money to get out there and get it on the ground. And that was kind of the circumstance in this case. So the planning team got together. Keep in mind, we have not executed in a formal agreement yet with this project. We do plan to hereafter, pending the discussions today. But the planning project team got together and discussed next actions with regards to this natural falls. And that's where our project amendment, or really our scope of work reduction, comes into place. So they are proposing a reduction in deliverables of large wood debris, LWD, large wood debris structures. Originally, in this area, there's about 10 structures that were proposed to be placed. They are now proposing to remove that and just keep it up here, since there is still habitat benefit for cutthroat and other species of fish and critters that go in and around. So they still propose here, and they do see a merit in it, an ecological benefit. But they just don't think they need to be doing this full section until they reassess what to do with this relatively large fish passage natural falls. Funding will go from 100,000 to 74,000. Matching funds, as you can saw, also is being reduced from 79 to 57. Matching funds were being provided by NIFWF, Natural Fish Wildlife Foundation, and those were to work on the culverts over here. That is also going to be reassessed. That was not PFA funded, so that's not really primarily our concern. Again, really the project request is reducing and removing these large wood debris placements and keeping these ones. So going from 25 to 15. I didn't see any major issues or concerns with this request. Like I said, this is working very closely with ODF&W staff. So we've had some extensive conversations, and they did not see any major concerns or issues with this request. So this is what I'm putting forward in front of the committee to approve it or not. I'm happy to answer any questions before. I would assume, Chad, we go for a motion and second and approval kind of thing. Andrew?
Yeah, were there not benefits on the South Fork Clear Creek for resident trout? Why did they decide to eliminate those but keep them in the other reaches where the benefits for cutthroat would be observed?
Yeah, they just didn't think they were going to be as realized, was my understanding. And they just wanted to do some, instead of just kind of spending money because they have it, they want to be more strategic with the funding and really reassess as a project team the reaches. So that's why they are actually reducing funding. They just didn't want to frivolously use it just because it was there.
Andy, I just have one observation, and that is that this is a 40% reduction in deliverables and a 25% reduction in the funding request. So can you walk me through, is it fixed costs, move-in costs, et cetera, that are adding to that difference between the reduction in deliverables versus the reduction in the funding request? Did they provide an updated budget?
Yes, let me pull that up right now. It's coming in. My initial assumption would be that there is still a substantive amount of planning that is required for this type of work. And some that still needs to be secured. Let me pull this budget into frame here. I did send this in the packet. I'm happy to go over here, but they did reduce some hours here in the budget. They reduced tree fell here in the budget. Same thing. That's matched, so that's a little bit irrelevant. So it does, yeah. It seems they kept some of the planning hours for it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. There's still planning hours that need to be allocated to the large wood placements that they are going to do.
But it
And
does
maybe-
seem like they reduced. Oh, I'm sorry, Chad.
No, I'm sure that once you're on site and you've got the equipment there and everything, then it's relatively inexpensive to add the additional large wood placements. So having this budget helps show why there's a 40% reduction in deliverables versus a 25% reduction in the funding request. I just wanted to make sure that everybody saw that and is comfortable with why there is a difference there.
Appreciate that. And yeah, that will also go into kind of the approval and everything. So it's all solidified in the new agreement that we'll be creating with them.
Right. So like equipment mobilization does not change at all. Some of these fixed costs are just going to be what they are, and that's why it is not apples to apples. 40% reduction in deliverables is 40% reduction in funding request. So with that, I guess I would entertain a motion to let them amend this request. And Andy, you mentioned that there isn't an agreement in place, and that's important, right? Because that means that we can accept this amendment request, and then it goes into an agreement.
That is correct. It's much easier at this point in time. So they held off on, we were going to do contracting in November with them. And that's when the discussion happened. And it was my recommendation to wait till the committee. And since we didn't have a December meeting, that's why we're now pushed out to January for it. It's a much easier process.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Andy before we entertain a motion? Okay. Does anyone feel like making a motion to accept this amendment request?
I'm happy to make the motion to accept the request.
Great. Thank you, Courtney. Do we have a second?
I'd second it.
All right. We got a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting and approving this amendment request, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All right. All opposed, same sign. None. And motion carries. Andy, we can approve this amendment request.
Great. Thank you very much.
Chad,
I appreciate it.
Chair, would
Courtney,
you
go
be
ahead.
open to a kind of mechanics question on not this project, but just on requests for changes and information? Just being new and anticipating that committee members will cycle on and often be new when they're looking at projects and may not have been part of reviewing them. I wondered if in the future it would be possible for staff to share either some kind of board highlights, strengths, something about the project to help sort of signal which pieces were key to some of the decision making on the selection. Just because I didn't have context for some of the value of the project and what was being removed when I looked at it kind of in isolation.
Yeah, that's totally fair, Courtney, and a good recommendation. I think some of the things that we could provide would be the scores that the project received based on the rubric it was scored against, as well as the recommendation from the presentations we had by the stream bios. Are those two things that we could share in the future, Andy?
Yeah, I'll look at providing some kind of more background and information on it without getting too overly, too much information. I'm happy to. Some high point, level points and whatnot. No problem. Figure something out.
Yeah. And not just for this project, I think is what Courtney is getting at, is that when these requests come to us, maybe having more of a system in place for background information for the project that's seeking that amendment, for any new committee members that may not have been familiar with the project. Is that what you were trying to get at, Courtney?
Yeah, and I really appreciate the priority of not making too much make work for staff in the process. So if there's just those elements that are easy copy paste or links to things.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great request, and I'll definitely think it through and figure out some process to add on to it. I appreciate it. This is the first round we're going through amendments, so I welcome your guys' recommendations moving forward. You're always welcome to shoot me an email back. More information, please. I do encourage it. But yeah, thank you. Great idea.
Yeah, Andy, maybe we could get an update in the next meeting, just when we get an amendment request, what is our process, and just like 3 or 4 bullet points. These are the materials that will be provided along with any amendment request, so we kind of memorialize that.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to, we can go over that more on what we do internally and what that might look like for you guys going forward, just so, yeah, we can memorialize it and kind of have it in process. I will add that.
All right, thank you. And thank you for bringing that up, Courtney. That's really helpful. So, Andy, I think that brings us to the staff update as the next item.
Alrighty, give me just a quick sec to make sure I add this note here before I forget this idea about the amendments. It's done. Great. Perfect. All right, staff report. Oh, we're not on that one yet. Okay. So we'll go through the staff report. I'm just going to kind of go through each of these primary bullets, but I'm happy to answer questions after each bullet. Don't have to wait till the end of the slide. We definitely can. I sent you guys a lot of material on that staff report, which is also posted online for anyone interested. So I'm probably not going to go over a lot of the very little minor details, some of the examples I provided, but if you have a question about it, I'm happy to pull it up, and we're ready to do that for any of these bullet points. So please do not hesitate about that, but I'll just be providing that high-level summary of what's going on. So the first one is our review period, which is coming up. We are currently in our review period that started in mid to late November, technically, and has worked through December, through the holidays. It's been going very well, and thanks again to all the partner agencies that have contributed, ODF, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, NOAA, and OWEB. It's been very helpful. So we do, as a reminder to everyone, we have 5 regional review teams across the state. Our last meeting in November went into depth about this. If anyone is interested in that process, it is posted online as a recording. So the next step, I will be closing reviews for the regional 5 review teams across the state by the end of this month. What they will then do is deliver those reviews to me. I'll compile them. And while I do that, I will assign reviews to each of the committee members here in early February. So the goal is by February 3, you should all have access to your specific reviews. It will be using the same grant management system as last year. It's pretty intuitive. For the new members, just so you're aware, I will send out like a big email that announces it. You'll probably get some notification emails from our grant management system. But once I sent out that big email, that's kind of when you can kind of start. It will also have a tutorial link, which is helpful. Watch that video. It will show you how to use the whole system, review and everything. But it will allow you split screen, hopefully pretty smooth. So yes, I will get that to you guys in February. So in the second week or third week of February, I will deliver to you guys all of the reviews from the regional review teams. For any new members online, what that looks like is a master document Excel sheet where you are actually get access to every review for every proposal. They will be numbered and coded per your region because each review team only reviews a certain amount of proposals, but you will have access to everything, so you can have a full consideration in February, and it will also have all the comments. Hopefully by mid to late February, I will get you all the staff presentations, which I know we'll talk about soon. That's the stream bio presentations. They're the lead for each regional review team. It was requested last year at our committee meeting that I try to get you guys these presentations ahead of time, at least 2 weeks if we can. And that's an opportunity for you guys to provide comment and feedback on those presentations or questions. You can shoot questions directly to me and I can connect you with Stream Bios or whatever it is. And then we can address those at in-person meeting. But that's just an opportunity to look at the presentations ahead of time, which was requested, which I think was a great improvement. And then we will wrap up reviews by early March. And then we will have our in-person meeting, which we'll get into shortly here. Before I move on to that, is there any questions about the review period that is coming up in February? It will be ahead of our next meeting. As a reminder, we have about 60, don't quote me, 63, 64 proposals. We will have 3 teams. That's about 21, 22 proposals per team. These are pretty comprehensive projects with very long applications. So just giving you a little pre-warning, the amount of time that it may take. The system's great at streamlining the process for us. But we don't get to streamline your guys' brains to review all of it. So just a heads up of what to expect for the next month. I will move on to the next thing. Again, no questions with that. Great. So let me scroll my notes down here. In-person meeting. So it's kind of I'm recommending that we hold our in-person meeting every year in Salem moving forward in March. And I'll talk about what I want to do or recommend for summer trips. But I did try to organize a trip in the in-person meeting this year. And it's very hard to organize a trip to look at water when it's winter. I think everyone understands that. So it gets pretty dangerous. We want to get you guys in the river. We want to get you guys in the low flow conditions where you can really see what's going on. Like when I was at Milton Freewater last year, you guys got to see those photos. We don't get to see all that when we're just walking on the banks. So my recommendation is that every year in March or April, depending on our solicitation and timing, we hold our in-person selection meeting in Salem. It actually does help with process a lot because that's a 2-day meeting. And then we'll go into the summer session, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So that in-person meeting, just for the new members online here, it is a 2-day meeting that will be held in Salem. It'll be at, as far as we're aware right now, at ODFW headquarters. We might change that. Tiffany, our administrative assistant for this grant program, will be reaching out to each of you over the next few weeks here to confirm hotels, park, valet, food, everything. We do plan to have you guys stay in downtown Salem, either at the Holman or at the Grand. We will see where that turns out. Day 1, it'll be the exact same format as last year. It'll be an all day. It'll be a presentation from the Stream Bios. After each region presents, it'll be an opportunity for each of you to engage with the Stream Bio and ask questions. They're very intimately involved with all these projects. Again, they're the team lead for the review regions. So day 1 will just be that. It'll be presentations, questions, and answers. The public does not participate in that time. It is just a committee discussion with the department, our partners, agencies here, and the Stream Bios. Following day 1, just so you're all aware, for those who are thinking about staying the night or not, we will hold a dinner for everyone again. After the meeting, usually our meeting will conclude around 5. We'll meet around 6:30 for dinner in downtown Salem. So if you can pull off staying at least one night, that would be the one I would recommend. Those of you that have to travel, we're happy to entertain 2 nights. Again, just share that with Tiffany. She'll be reaching out very shortly in the next week or so here. Day 2 is kind of where everything's happening. That's going to be a half day. It worked out really well last year. So we'll be showing up probably around 9 a.m. on day 2. And that'd be March 13th. And that's the opportunity for the committee to just talk and look at the funding lines. For those new committee members here, I will deliver a preliminary project packet ahead of the in-person committee meeting that just compiles everything for the projects, probably more info than you ever need, but it will be there. And on the first few pages will be a funding line arbitrarily drawn from the ranking process that I will go through soon and talk about that. But day 2 is to look at that funding line, look at that packet. You guys get to discuss amongst yourself what you want to do with that funding line, projects to move up or down, justify why. And the Stream Bios will also be present on day 2 to engage and answer questions. Whew, that was a lot. Before I be quiet about that, we're going to talk about the summer session real quick. I'm hoping that this year we can start that. We do have a few projects that should be wrapped up. and I am proposing that we also do a summer field trip. Hopefully every year or every other year for the committee, depending on everyone's availability or desire to travel. I'd love to make that like a 2-day thing. I'd find a location where there's a few projects and we could at least do 1 or 2 tours kind of thing. And that's when we get to get out on the ground and see what's really happening. I'd highly recommend that. Our grantees love that. It shows that you guys are really dedicated and interested in the investments that we're making across the state. A lot more to come from that. But that's my proposal, is that we do every year Salem in March, and then summer we get to go travel.
Yeah, and
Any
I would be
questions?
supportive of this. I will absolutely support that. I would also support adding lunch to day 1.
Yes. You'll be getting bag lunch and everything. Tiffany, Tiffany's the better half here who knows to do all that good stuff. So yeah, she'll be
Very
asking
good.
you your restrictions and
See
all
that on
good
day
stuff.
2, but
Yeah, and coffee. Coffee too. So, any
yeah, I think that's
questions?
a great recommendation, Andy. And having the ability for us to meet as a committee to see a funded project in the summer sounds like a great opportunity to get to know one another better and to see the good work that's being done with the grant program. I'm not hearing any other questions or comments, Andy. I think we're ready to move on to the updated rank processing, and you can walk us through the OCRF model.
Andy, real quick, any ideas on the summer trip? Initial ideas on when we might do that?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll put some thoughts I have some thoughts now, but I'll put some more thoughts together for maybe February, just so I can run it by you guys, some locations, and then I'll reach out to grantees. Let me note that real quick, Andrew, and I do have some thoughts to that.
Okay, great.
And I think more importantly
keep in
than the
mind.
location at this time is a calendar hold for the timing that you're thinking.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
Dates and location.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like I literally have stuff booked in November already. It kind of blows my mind. So the summer fills up quick too, and I'm sure that's true for everybody.
Of course, and and we'll do our best to facilitate everyone's schedule. It could be a late summer, doesn't have to be, or what we're thinking. It could go into a fall timeframe too. I can come up with an array of dates, and we can kind of have that open discussion next meeting. It will be plenty of time for that at our next meeting. Chad and Mark are okay with that. I'm thinking, we have a few locations that are wrapped up as far as I'm aware. We got one in Milton Freewater, which is a very large restoration. The very northeast corner of the state is absolutely beautiful. I gave you guys that update last year on that closing of the project. We also have a few restorations down in Coos Bay that we might want to. My goal is to get you guys to without too much travel and without too much time of your time days wise. I love engaging with all of you, but I get paid for this, so it's much easier for me to take the days to do it. So that's kind of what we're looking at, but it's probably going to be, I'm feeling it might be on the coast because we have a few more projects that are clustered that are a little bit more on the coastal right now. That would change in the years to come as projects start to roll out on implementation. We've just funded a few that were ready to go and did it and kicked some butt.
And aren't most, if not all of us, located on the west side of the Cascades in terms of where we live? Yeah. So
yeah, most of them are
logistically. Yeah.
This year's solicitation looks a little different, right? As you guys will see, we got a good amount of proposals from each side.
I meant actually the committee members that most of us.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah, so
Yes.
logistically easier to organize us, say, to Southwest Oregon than it would be to Northeast.
Good point.
Not that I don't love going to Milton Freewater. It's beautiful out there.
Any other questions on that? Let's get prepped here. Just getting my notes ready for the ranking. All right, so I sent you guys a pretty detailed breakdown of the new proposed ranking process that utilizes the scoring. So I don't again, I'm not going to get into too much detail in that example. I gave you guys like a 2-page, probably too much info, but I just wanted to go through a whole process of what that would look like. So you have that. That's also posted online for anyone that is on this call for our ranking process moving forward. We are still following the same scoring matrix, that was advertised in last year's solicitation. So a few notes though, before I kind of open it up for questions and discussions, which I'm happy to entertain. Again, it is different than last year. Last year, we just averaged scores. We were more time constrained, but we just averaged scores, and that's how we came up with that preliminary funding line in that preliminary project package I spoke about earlier. The Z scoring does have some benefits over averaging, especially for a group such as this. It does standardize scores by normalizing variations in scoring tendencies between teams. That's huge when we have 7 voting members. I believe it's a fair comparison. Proposals are ranked based on the relative performance within their team and not the raw score alone. And it allows for a unified master ranking, easily combining proposals into a single ranked list, much better than averaging, in my opinion. I've also spoke internally with other ODF&W staff members who do agree that this may be a great process going forward. Again, this only gets us to that preliminary project packet and that funding line on day 2, when you guys are still allowed to move projects up and down it. This is just getting us to the starting line for that. You'll still be able to do what you did last year. I think that is it that I wanted to say about that. I do hope to compare it to last year's. We are learning still. We're very much in adaptive management with this grant program, in my opinion. So, we're just seeing what works. We'll see how this, if we want to move forward, we'll see how this compared to last year's process, how we all felt about it. We can have a discussion later this year, end of this year, before next cycle, and modify. We can always go back if we have to. At this point, is there any questions for me on this recommended scoring model or ranking model?
Courtney, you got your hand up?
Yeah, first I like the Z scoring. I think it's great for dealing with bias issues that we sometimes don't realize we're leaning into. But the one, a couple pieces, I mean, I think that you can get a decimal wrong or something wrong behind the spreadsheet, and really it's so complex. So I think there's that caution. So, but the question I have is on the funding line mechanism, and I wanted to be sensitive to that. It doesn't communicate too overtly to applicants that if you are above or below the funding line, there can't be some movement. There could be a request for 1.5 million just above the line, and 3 requests for 400,000 below the line. And do we still have that ability to have the discussion fairly that maybe there's more benefit in the 3 over the 1? So that how it's communicated, because Z scoring is so kind of scientifically concrete.
Chad, if you don't mind, I'm happy to respond.
Yeah, and because that sheet, Courtney, you were right. That is how it works. And I think the question is, how do we communicate that to applicants, that there is committee member discretion to move those projects above or below the line based on our perception of the greatest benefit, right? More bang for our buck, if you will. Is that the right question, Courtney? How are we communicating that with the applicants?
I think it's a confirmation, because I don't know it to be true, that we are in effect agreeing that we could make those changes to reorder or move above and beyond. And then how do you communicate? Yes.
Great question, and thank you for bringing it up. You do have the authority to do it right off the bat. That is your guys' directive. So you definitely have the authority to move it justifiably, right? And that's why we have those meetings, to be able to argue, like what you just said, Courtney, the benefit at the end of the day to covered species. That's what's being done here. And when you're able to articulate that and that moving the proposal from below above, that's exactly what we'll want to have in the meeting. We will document it too, as you guys discuss amongst yourself. You would definitely have the latitude to do that. That will not change. That's what we did last year. So thank you for that question. How we are communicating it to our applicants. We got some improvement from last year. There is very big, red, bold, as clear as day, that's going to be on there saying this is a preliminary not even recommendation. I have language in there that we decided on last year that we will be following again. It does get posted publicly ahead of the meeting, but it will be very, very clear to them. Applicants did tune in last year. I didn't hear anything where they were saying they didn't understand the process. They actually respected that we kind of opened the curtain up and showed them how the process happens. That's actually what I did hear multiple times. And a lot of them were on edge because they're like, well, I saw my project get moved, but I was able to listen to the discussion and I heard why. So it just kind of, I think it goes to show that they will be tuning in on that meeting and they really do listen to what you all have to say about it. But I didn't hear anything in the terms of, or in the sense of confusion as to how we were moving stuff or major upset about that. They were just like, wow, I can't believe we were able to see that process. Kind of thing. And they were just kind of nervous. I'd be nervous watching that. I don't want my stuff talked about publicly in the hundreds of thousands of millions. So does that answer at least part of the question right now, Courtney? Okay, thank you.
It's like, Mark, you've got your hand up as well.
Yeah, I think Courtney, you raised a really good point just in terms of what's presented and how it's conveyed and what message is received independent of what message is sort of sent. And one thought I have is to not actually put a line on these list of projects. And you could have a running total on the right side that shows the cumulative amount that would be spent if all these projects were funded. And it's a little bit symbolic. I think the line really conveys more certainty than we're trying to convey. So without a line, you could just have a running total down the right side. People can see at what point we've gone over 10 million, but it's a more generalized presentation rather than a line that somewhat conveys above and below. Because if I recall correctly, last year we funded everything above the line. What we did in addition was pull one or two things from below the line, and that's a whole different game than an applicant seeing themselves above the line and then not being funded. So that's just one thought on how to present it that might be clear that there's some give and take around that point.
Appreciate it. I'll note that. Thank you.
I guess,
Yeah,
just sort of a slightly different question. It's Andy, I would assume unless you have a statistical background that you haven't shared with us, you obviously got a statistician involved in looking at that stuff. So I tried to look through it, but didn't have much input, if you will. I think it would be interesting to compare this to how it was done last year.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed on the slide, you mentioned the OCRF model, and unless OCRF has changed how they do it, and we haven't heard that it is being changed, the OCRF model is somewhat different than the PFA model.
It is. And just to kind of respond to you, Mark, I did definitely have some internal stats people look at it. I do have a stat background just from my history and doing research. It's not my favorite, but I did. But yeah, no, we've had some internal folks look at it, give some sign of approval, and the same thing. Definitely want to compare this to last year. So once we kind of later this year, I hope we can just have a discussion, a few months after, whatever timeline that looks like. How did we feel about it? Did it, provide the benefit that we wanted? OCRF model. It's kind of a rip off of it. Some of the OCRF model just doesn't work simply because we have 7 voting members in our long-term structure. So it just didn't work well with our uneven numbers and how we kind of split it into 3 teams. And that was the only reason we kind of went over and changed it a bit. So there's some that was there, we adapted it, but we modified it a bit to fit the needs of this committee, of the intent of the seats on this committee too, with the known bias and stuff that happened. So that was kind of the background there. That's why we strayed away a little bit, but there is no changes to OCRF. So no, don't. I should have added a disclaimer there. OCRF's not changing.
Right. Just for clarification, OCRF has an odd number of people evaluating committees as well. So I don't think the odd number is the
yeah, I think they do. I think you all individually review. You don't do teams, right? Am I mistaken in that? Yeah, I think the teams thing was slowing it off too for us.
We could just say that it's based off the OCRF model, not a carbon copy.
Probably what I should have said.
Any other questions or feedback for Andy regarding the rank processing? All right, Andy, I think that brings us to the next point of your report, and that's the stream bio presentation templates.
Yes. So I sent you guys that stream bio presentation template, how we handle that. It's pretty straightforward. That's the guidance that I give to each of the regional review team stream bios when they're creating their presentation for the in-person meeting. Now's an opportunity to provide some recommendations that you might want to see on there. We have some time. You can provide it to me in the next month too. You don't have to do it today, but it's just to kind of highlight, like, look at this guidance we give them. Anything else you want to see on that, feel free to let me know. Please reach out. We can have a discussion today. You can also, again, you're going to get there, that guidance is much longer than the actual individual slides. It just gives them a lot of opportunity and flexibility in how they can present, and that was my goal. But in February, you will see their presentations. So you will have an opportunity to actually ask for some more info here or there when they do present publicly. But this is just to put it on your radar, have a discussion if we'd like, or we can kind of move on. Just an FYI.
I just have the one question, Andy. The current template, has it incorporated any feedback from the stream bios from last year's presentation?
Yes. Yeah. I usually,
that's
probably fine where I usually put all that feedback when I do hear from you guys or the stream bios, because I do get quite a bit from both sides, which is great. I insert that immediately into next year's solicitation stuff. So I copy our process and move it next year and add all of our notes. So that's why when you guys are like, if you just have an idea one day, you can shoot me an email and it will get cataloged for next year's notes, just in general. So yeah, long-winded way to say yes, Chad. Sorry.
Great. Looks like Chris, you've got a comment.
Yeah, just a quick thought on the presentation template. Not all of the covered species are federally protected, but for those that have recovery plans, given the interagency involvement in developing those plans, it would be nice to see in the presentation for those proposals that do provide conservation benefit to listed species, some sort of reference to the priority of that action within within recovery plans. I looked at those templates briefly this morning. Can't remember if I saw that as a suggestion, but I think that's quite important.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We definitely will. I'll send that note out. I'll add that in, Chris. And one thing, just to make everyone aware, we did add a question this year. This was 6 months ago when we were talking about it, so I'm sure it escaped our minds. We asked about federally recognized species. I believe that's on this year's questions list. I don't believe it was recommended for next year. So that should actually be on there too in one of the questions. And it should, so that I'll give guidance for this, and that should be where they're going to point to, and it'll be a real easy answer for them. Actually, great idea. We'll highlight that.
Courtney?
I wondered in the presentations if there is a plan for acquisition, ownership, and I may not be asking this correctly, but just wanting to make sure we have some sense of experience, kind of acuity in completing acquisition and managing long-term ownership. Not to say, just so that we know, it'd just be helpful to kind of understand, are we walking into something brand new for an organization, or is this a learned and experienced entity?
We will be, acquisition is on eligible project in last year's solicitation. So I will be actually proposing something later this year to the committee as in regards to what that will look like. And it will involve some of those safeguards and background checks.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. We'll definitely be wanting that insight when we bring something forward to you guys. But right now,
so we shouldn't be saying it at this point.
There should not be. They didn't have an option to do it unless they snuck in and hit implementation, and then but no, there was no acquisition on the table for this solicitation. That is correct.
Okay. Appreciate the clarity.
Is that the extent of the staff report, Andy? Is there anything else?
Oh gosh, I think you guys are done hearing me, but you got another slide of it. So no, there's nothing else for the
We've
staff
got
report.
the PFA grant OAR revisions as the next agenda item. I think we're ready to move on to.
Yes. All right. Let's move on to the OARs, Oregon Administrative Rules. Let me get my notes ready here. Again, I sent you guys a pretty detailed track change in our standard format when it comes to the revised rules. For anyone online, this is posted at pfagrants.com under the advisory committee link. It is also posted publicly through the formal process that we do. So we are working through that. Any revisions and edits today we want to do as a committee, we're able to insert that right into that process, assuming we want to go forward with it. Just so you guys know, we are not pigeonholed into anything right now. But anyone publicly, you can access this online. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I can provide those revisions to you. So as I noted in the staff report, you've all been sent the most current form of the OAR revisions with the track changes. I sent an update, I believe, yesterday too. On screen here are the major revisions. I don't plan to go page by page, but I will review these changes and then open up the floor for any discussion or recommendations. We hope to bring these revisions to the February commission meeting. So dependent on the conversation today, the committee recommendation to the commission would be very helpful if we can do that today. Or we can entertain doing that. Let me double check the time frame here at the February committee meeting if we want to, because in February we have our committee meeting on the 11th. Commission's on the 14th. If you didn't hear my big sigh there, it'd be great if we can get an approval today. We can always approve stuff pending the edits that you guys request also. But the options there. So real quick, the major revisions, they have been reviewed. I've worked with DOJ, internal department staff. We've reached out to DOJ for legal sufficiency. So stuff we are proposing is legally sufficient from our understanding. So the primary edits are the unified grant pathway. We've removed the distinction between urgent grants and regular grants and consolidated them into one single pathway to reduce confusion. We've simplified the rules overall. We've removed outdated rules that previously addressed separate funding pathways or just didn't really make sense after lessons learned in year one and the adaptive management that we're kind of moving through. We are proposing a program name change.
Andy, I think we'll call it continuous improvement rather than adaptive management. That is a separate program, and I would hate to have folks get confused using that term. So for this space, let's go with continuous improvement.
There is the Adaptive Management Planning Committee. Thank you, Chad. I appreciate that. I like it. Program name change. So mitigation has been recommended to be removed from the grant program name and advisory committee. Again, we've confirmed for legal sufficient with DOJ. The term mitigation has caused much confusion amongst the public when it comes to this grant program and what it has to occur. Pre-award work authorization is put into here. So this is huge. This was actually the biggest driver for me to recommend a change to these OARs. So we've revised them to allow pre-award work to begin before project agreements are executed, addressing a very key request from every single one of our grantees, every one of them, almost. So upon commission, what this would look like is upon commission approval, following an award letter from ODF&W, the grantee could start work immediately upon receipt of that award letter prior to the execution of their agreement 6 months later. It takes about 6 months to execute these agreements, especially the large ones. This would be a huge, huge benefit to our grantees, especially when we advocate getting money out and on the ground in a fast manner. There is, of course, risk that comes with that. We are addressing that in our award letter. We are working with our legal team to address that. But this is what OWEB does. And I've worked and talked with OWEB, and they've just seen great results from it. And I would recommend the same. My personal experience, it was very helpful, especially for when I was a small organization and cash strapped and got the money for the project, but I'm 6 months out. It's very hard to keep staffing and everything. So that'd be huge. I'm almost done, and then I'm happy to kind of open it Acquisition language. We've updated it to match exactly what the statute states so that we meet the original intent from legislature. Project flexibility. We've added provisions for the committee and the department to make minor project changes without requiring commission approval within reasonable limits. This way, we don't need to go to commission below 10% project modifications of the budget, for example, which is a big thing. As you can see, projects often have unforeseen challenges or need amendments. That gives us this authority as not only the department, but the committee at the same time. It will allow us to be more adaptive and nimble of a grant administering program overall. We don't have to just get your approval and the commission approval, which is months later. Last thing, we've updated definitions. We've included new definitions for covered species with a better understanding as we've learned across the last few years. We've added an updated definition for tribes and clarified others to better align with the program's intent and again to avoid some misconception when it comes to this grant program. Last thing I'll say is, again, in those edits, strike through means removal recommendation, bold meant addition. I did line item those edits. If I'm happy to open it up for discussion at this time, Chad, and hand it back to you. Thank you.
Great. To begin, just got a question for my fellow committee members. Has everyone had a chance to review these proposed revisions? Okay, that's great. I'm seeing everybody's head nod, and that's really helpful. So Andy's explanation is thorough enough, given that we've already done our independent reviews of these. Do we have any questions for Andy? And if not, then I would entertain a motion to approve these proposed revisions.
Chad, I had a question. This is my first time going through the OARs, and so I spent a fair bit of time just making sure I understood them and looked at specifically at the changes. I do have a fair bit of comments. Is that something you would just want me to summarize it also in track changes and send out to the group? Or you mentioned you didn't want to go line by line, and there's probably too much here to go line by line, but just how to address that.
Yeah, you could send those back to Andy and he can distribute them to all of us for comment. But if you'd like to capture kind of the spirit of what your recommended edits are, that would be helpful. Are they language? Are they substantive?
They probably run the gamut from just clarification of intent. I'll just give you an example of that. There's some language in terms of eligible applicants, a political subdivision of the state. I didn't understand. That's something I hadn't seen as in terms of an applicant. So I wanted clarification on that. For-profit companies, that was also in any other granting body that I've worked with. I've never seen that as an eligible applicant. So I just wanted to find out intent there, and what were you thinking, and do you have an example, sort of thing. Maybe I should pause.
Yeah, if we pause there, the political subdivision, I believe that would include things like municipalities or counties or local water districts. It's just divisions of local government.
That was okay.
So we would want the water district to be able to put in an application, if you will.
Okay.
And then the for-profit companies, that would be if there is an applicant like a timber owner, whether they are large or small. Oftentimes small woodland owners hold their property under an LLC, and we would want them to be able to apply for stream improvement projects.
Okay.
They shouldn't be ineligible just because of the type of entity that they are.
Okay.
And especially with the small woodland owners entering into the agreements with the state, it's advantageous for them to do so under an LLC rather than just their individual, because of liability reasons, right? Contracting and liability reasons. You wouldn't want to have your own personal assets all.
Right.
Anyway, it makes sense for the LLC to do that rather than the individual.
Okay. Other questions? Just little details here and there, like also on page 7, it would be under 5B. It talks about placing logs on other wood-based material. I didn't see anything about boulders even though it's not my first choice, they are a tool in the toolbox. It was almost, it doesn't say no boulders, but I was just curious if there's thoughts there on, whether that's appropriate or not.
Yeah, I can respond. Yes, Scott, that's just some recommendations from the PFA authors report that could be included as restoration opportunities. I do believe, I'm trying to pull it up now, there's a final line that says other restoration measures that prove benefits to covered species or something like that. And that's a catch-all statement to allow what's needed to get this work on the ground done.
Okay.
Great question.
The list is not exhaustive. Those were just examples provided.
Okay.
Mhm.
That was what I thought. I just wanted to raise it as something I observed.
Appreciate it.
Let's see, the next one would be on page 8. I guess it would fall under 5F. 5F. So language was changed there regarding land acquisition. And a specific, let's see, supporting establishment of conservation easements on land other than forest land to protect riparian areas.
Yes.
So I guess I understand the concern there in terms of acquisition. I'm just wondering, it seems like there's a lot of potential conservation value left on the table there if we get that explicit on what we can or can't do. For example, like a head wall of a stream is where a lot of the large wood comes from in these downstream areas. And so if we eliminate that as a potential option, we may be, closing out an option to protect a large wood source down the road, for decades. So I was just curious, is that something that can be left up to individual landowners rather than prescribing it here?
Scott, the prescription comes from matching the statute. So if you've had a chance to review the statute itself, it explicitly says conservation easement on land other than forest land. And that's mirrored in the author's report as well. So that's where that language comes from.
Okay, so that's pretty hard and fast.
Statute.
But okay. Okay. I'm not seeing anything else too substantive, just little details here and there.
We can add, Andy, do you want to add clarifying language that list of examples is not exhaustive for the large wood versus boulder placements for in-stream habitat?
I will look at
or Scott, are you comfortable with it?
I think legally right now we're okay with it, I believe. Unless you want me to explore it with DOJ, but as it stands, this wasn't the intent to be an exhaustive list.
Yeah.
I think Chad pointed out that it does say projects include but are not limited to, so that leaves the door open. I noticed it wasn't mentioned anywhere, and I just thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing so. Are you comfortable with it now, with that understanding that that's not the only options?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
The only other thing that I think is substantive would be on the project applications over on page 9, where it says project application shall provide at a minimum the following. I didn't see a note of whether the proposed project is a phase of, one phase of a larger multi-phase project. And I think that I always like to know that when I was, reviewing grants for funding, whether it's part of a larger scheme, if they could be explicit about that.
I can probably respond to that, Chad. No, great question, Scott. And this just gives us the latitude to prescribe our application and update it yearly as we find recommendations and needs. So we've included, like I said earlier, a question about endangered species this year, as we didn't have in the first year. So point being, though, there's going to be a question: is contributing funds is going to be in there. You're going to see an opportunity. There's an opportunity for applicants to say what else. Like, what is happening in this project in the large sphere? Like, where is the PFA? How does this fit? And then what is the bigger sphere of the project? That is in there as a question. And you'll see that. I know you haven't seen it. You and Courtney haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
and you came on after the application got settled and wrapped up. But yeah, you will definitely see that bigger picture in it.
Okay. Yeah, the other stuff is more housekeeping. I saw a couple redundancies where the same sentence was put in twice, and I'll send you that. So yeah, that was it. That's all I
Yeah,
had.
you're welcome to send it to me, Scott. And then I can reach out and talk to you directly about any kind of redundancies and formatting errors. I'm happy to. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
And thanks for such a thorough review, Scott. That's the exact kind of engagement we're hoping for by committee members. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
Yep.
Mark, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. And Scott, good job going through all of that. I was just going to share for Scott for your benefit and maybe also for Courtney, but we've previously to you guys coming on the committee had some pretty long conversations around acquisition and what it includes and what it doesn't include. And I think the language that's there does reflect the statute and the author's report. But I think our last conversation we had in August was we were going to come back and try and clarify that under the last category of other measures. There's potentially an opportunity to consider other things if they're appropriate. And I think in the August meeting, we'd made a comment of, we try and take that up before Kristen and Heath went off the committee, but effectively we didn't bring it up again. It just sort of got punted. So that's sort of out there, and I'm not advocating anything for it at the moment. I'm just sort of recapping the last conversation we had about it for your benefit and others as well.
So sounds like, Scott, you can send some of those kind of redundant sentences and that kind of stuff to Andy. Pending that, are we ready to take a vote on this, or do we want to come back and try to do it in February, which would only give us about 2 days prior to the commission meeting?
I'd recommend, if we are comfortable, to do a motion today, because there is a full public process that we're currently going through, and we want to be as transparent as possible leading up to a revision of these rules that we don't expect to open too often.
Well,
Yeah,
if folks,
can we make the
go ahead,
caveat that the motion allows Andy the opportunity to work with Scott and incorporate any changes such that Scott has referenced that are sort of appropriate and clarifications or something like that, so that there's an opportunity for Scott's comments to be considered, but yet at the same time we can move forward?
Yeah, I didn't have anything that I would consider a deal killer as well. And part of it's probably just my newness to this process and this group. And so just trying to, understand the history, and thanks for some of that clarification.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we'd be able to broach that, because that would be encroaching on decisions outside of a public meeting. But
here's what we can do, Andy. We've got 40 minutes left on this agenda item. So why don't we just walk through those now, Scott? And we can just address them here in a public process. We can all get on board. So if you have those kind of redundant sentences pulled up, we can work through them.
Yeah, let me share screen.
And that way we'll be able to make a motion with all of it included.
Team editing. I apologize to everyone else on this call, because that is brutal. All right. Let's see. The redundant one, page 11, Andy.
Do you have line item on there too?
Yeah. So let's see. It would be line. I'll wait till you get to the page there. Line 337 looks like it's redundant with 346. Or sorry, part of line 330. That sentence. Those two sentences are repeated. Look like so.
Let me see. So 337, the construction of the process state federal along. And it's with which was the other one?
Number 9 down there, where it says the project is inconsistent with current state of Oregon department policies.
One is department goals, policies, and management plans. The other one is more of local state law. Is that correct?
That was
Um,
mine.
Oh, it does say the same. They say
Sentences
the
are the
same
same.
thing.
Department goals, policy, management, policy guidelines, or the consistent there's not under state, federal. It also brings federal in there. So there's some redundancy in that. Don't, yeah, but this one does
What I
bring
read is one
federal into
saying
it.
that it's not permissible, the other saying it's inconsistent with goals, right? So one would be that the 337 says the project would be illegal, not permissible. And then line 346 would say that it's inconsistent with goals and policies, management plans, inconsistent with laws, a little, well, redundant,
True.
but one is
Yeah.
saying it's not permissible, one saying it's inconsistent. I think that's the difference.
Okay, yeah, I just noticed the latter half of the first bullet sentence is the same as the sentence below. So I get what you're saying. The first part of that sentence is new versus the one down at number 9. The project is inconsistent with current. It's exactly the same. So I thought that was a little bit redundant, but
We could strike number 9 because it does look like it's captured in 4. So if we strike lines
The only-
346,
The
347,
only
go ahead,
element
Courtney.
in there is just being clear, because one is also saying kind of as determined by the department, while the other leaves it a little bit more open.
yeah.
So I don't know, I don't know which one's the right one. Is it better to keep the 2 statements and number 4 that is linked by an or lumped together? Does it accidentally fracture an intent if you pull them apart? Are you just doubly covered to have both?
Seems like language that was from DOJ here. So I'd have to consult them on it if you guys would like me to. That would be it. I don't see in.
Scott, is there an issue with having it in there twice?
I don't think so. I just happened to notice that the language is similar. I did comment while we're on this sentence, the intent of it I found really interesting because it's something I ran into back when I was working for the federal land management agencies. Oftentimes, what happens on federal land, which is roughly 50% of the state, is not exactly consistent with what state regulations, state guidelines might be. For example, a fish passage culvert design, we might have different design standards than the state does. So if I read this, I would, if they go with a federal design that's slightly different from an ODF&W design, that project would not be allowed. And so I just had a note in the margin that says not to sacrifice the good for the perfect, especially in the case, the example I just mentioned. So just something to think about. Yeah. Because federal land is managed by federal regulation, and they try to be a great partner with the state of Oregon as well, because we're all in it for pretty much the same reasons. But I'd hate to forego a project just because of a little minor detail like that. And I don't know, that's more into the nuances of what this thing does versus the language listed here. So
yeah, I'd be hard pressed to think we'd come across a situation in that sense. I get what you're saying though.
I could give you an example right now, Andy, of a project I'm working on the side, part-time. Dam removal, small dam removal in a wilderness area. The purpose and need is to allow fish to get by. And so we could do that just by breaching the dam without removing all the concrete. But there's some thought from state folks who are working with that all the concrete must be removed. And that, so just one example of where, the state desire or regulation, I think somebody quoted a regulation that it had to be removed. And, that may not be the case of what actually happens on the federal land management side. Just a possible example.
I think the state funding is what's coming into play in this situation here too. Since it's state funding, we're going to be abiding by state laws because this is not federal funding for this grant program. So I'm wondering if that's where that came from, that even though like that's, this is state funding. So at the very, I think that's the hierarchy to an extent. It's hard to get into federal discussion here.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to drag that out, but it's just something I noticed and I had run into before in my career. So I thought it worth mentioning.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We should put that in the parking lot and keep an eye out for it as applications are coming through. And if it becomes an issue, then it's something that we can address.
Feds are allowed to apply, yeah. Interesting.
I think we already covered my other question about, conservation easements on other than forest land.
Mhm.
That's pretty much it. I think all the other questions you guys answered. It's probably not even something I would send in at this point based on, your answers to me. So.
Okay, great. Well, if you feel like it's been addressed and you're comfortable with it, then we can entertain a motion to approve these revisions. Which someone would then have to make that motion.
I'll move.
Great. Thank you, Courtney. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second to keep the pattern going here. Courtney moves, I second.
Mark, are you okay with having Scott second, given that he was the one with the concerns over the document?
Of course.
Very good. So we've got a motion, a second. All in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, same sign. All right. That passes unanimously, Andy.
Great, thank you. So I appreciate the insight and the time. The next steps will be continue moving through the process. I will plan to go to commission. Let me just double check the date. Whoever's online, February 14th. We are on the agenda to present this to commission.
Great. I will be able to join you, Andy. Thank you.
Oh, great. You're going to be in. Oh, yeah. No, you're down.
It's at the Sportsman Show, Andy. Come on. I'm not going to miss that one.
Oh, it is a Sportsman Show, actually. Yeah, we'll see.
Oh, yeah, weird. That's not a known either. And Scott, thank you for such a thorough review. And Mark for the background on where and how we got to where we are. So I think this was a really productive conversation. All right. With that, I think that brings us to the end of the agenda. Do we have anything for the good of the order? Well, we've gotten a lot done and got it done ahead of schedule. Oh, Mark, got something.
Yeah, just a placeholder question, I guess, maybe for Andy or Jessica, but obviously we have a vacancy on the advisory committee. I wonder if you guys have any update on when that slot might be filled and if that person will be available to help with this round of grant reviews or where that's at.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mark. I can take that if that's okay with you, Chad. Great. Yeah, so ODFW is working with the governor's office to identify a replacement for the position previously held by Mr. Salinger. We're unclear right now on what that timeline is going to look like and if they'd be available for this ranking process. So we'll let you know as soon as we have more information on timelines, but currently we're working on that process.
Okay.
Thank you, Jessica. And if you are able to get someone in before the ranking process begins, I can make myself available, and I'm sure there are other committee members that would be willing to do so also to help bring that new committee member up to speed on who we are and what we do. Good question, Mark. Thank you. All right. Well, with that, I think we can adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye now.